What's good? Welcome to Real Politics, episode number 2. And I guess this is a real treat because the second episode, we're talking about probably one of the biggest debates in American history, Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. It's hard not to have seen this debate. If you didn't watch it, I guess that's a different sort of willful blindness. If you didn't watch the whole thing, be wary about who casts your vote, or when you cast your vote, rather. For me, I watched the whole thing. I'll probably give it another watch just to be a little bit more specific, and then I might make another video or just add an addition to this video based off that. Let's begin. I'm doing this all off of memory, and I'm doing this all from my personal perspective. I'm going to try to be a bit more positive than I imagine most people will. I'll try to be a bit more specific than most people will be. But again, I'm doing this from memory, so that's why I'm going to watch it one more time, take some notes down, and probably give something a little bit more direct to each candidate. So I want to start off with Donald Trump. It's hard to say what everyone else says when I see Donald Trump, because when I see Donald Trump, I see someone who actually knows what he's talking about. I see someone who probably does actually make the phone calls that it takes to get things done. And you have someone with a track record of getting things done. The accusations of him being a racist, I don't know. Is he a white supremacist? Yes. Is Joe Biden a white supremacist? Yes. They're both white supremacists. So calling Donald Trump out for being a liar, it doesn't really do much because Joe Biden is also a liar. Calling Donald Trump out for being a white supremacist, it does not affect me because all three people involved were white supremacists. The moderator as well. It's just kind of like upsetting because for two people that both stand for that same kind of system of white supremacy, of white sovereignship, it was a little weird for me. And I told one of my white friends this. It's like both these guys are just alike to me, but they view themselves so drastically differently than I would ever view them. And I guess that says a lot about the overall issue of race relations is, I guess, with the same thing with me compared to any other black guy, they probably see us all the same. Donald Trump might see us all the same. Joe Biden might see us all the same. But we would still have our unique individualistic qualities far beyond anything that has to do with blackness, far beyond anything that would have to do with just reconnecting back to Africa or building an African nation here in America. We would have a lot of different preferences, a lot of different personal issues, a lot of different perspectives based off religion. So it was interesting to see that kind of clash of ideology when it is two white supremacists fighting about white supremacy. I've been doing a lot of research into the Civil War, and it reminds me of like kind of that temper pitch. I guess in this case, I'm gonna skip forward a little bit and go to like the white supremacist thing since I'm already on it, and denouncing white supremacy. When they asked that and they directed it towards one person, I don't know why the question wasn't then directed also to Joe Biden to see what he said. They talked about the 1984 crime bill, and what's kind of sad is that this was something that Joe Biden in 1984, moving into his presidential campaign in 1988, was championing and standing behind and the foremost upon. And most of these social conditions that black men have to deal with, very much like Michael Bloomberg's leadership in New York, resulted in what is equivalent to ethnic cleansing, genocide, or once again mass incarceration against specifically black men, and black men that Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton refer to as super predators. I don't understand why there is no equal pressure on Joe Biden for the things that he says and things that he believes in, and the reality that he's been in politics. Donald Trump said 47 years, but I think the accuracy is about 55 years, or it's over 50 years that he's been involved in politics. And everything that Joe Biden has honestly accomplished has usually been on the basis of white supremacy and maintaining the status quo of white supremacy. Barack Obama, as many of us know, was indeed a white supremacist candidate. He identifies far more with his ethnic roots with his mother than any relationship that he might have had with his father. And that's shown inside his biography, that's shown in his book. It's something that he discusses often, and it was very apparent in his campaign. So I didn't walk into this really wondering what would Joe Biden or Donald Trump do for Black America, because there seems to be some kind of like systemic pressure for powerful white men not to help Black people at all, unless it's going to be something on the basis of welfare, or again like establishing the sense of white sovereignty, white supremacy. There's not much that they're really going to do to put us on an equal or even greater playing field, because some of them don't see disparity. They don't see disparity based off of poverty, and then make arguments that being Black and impoverished is horrific. But I think both men up to this date have seen enough Black people and very powerful situations in very powerful places, and maybe do much with the power, maybe not do much with the power, that to focus so much on the idea of what's going on in the Black community when they're not inside the Black community, I feel like both would be equally willing to work with the Black Caucus or NAACP to make changes within Black communities and to make legislature to fix that. The question in my mind is just, why hasn't it happened yet? And that's more so what I want to focus on with this. If you haven't seen the debate, then it wouldn't really matter what I have to say, because you didn't care to begin with. You would just be ascribing my beliefs. So if you're going to take on my beliefs and take on my perspective of what was going on, I'll focus more so on that for a few more minutes. It's like the hardship of this for me, the difficulty was, both of these men, are very well established in their field. They're both men worthy of respect. They're both men who, honestly, I feel like if either candidate got elected, they would do a great job for their party, for their background, for the things that they believed in personally. I think Joe Biden would be very successful as a moderate to bring both parties together on the basis of bipartisanship, to satisfy the radical left, and while bringing it to order and bringing ends to a lot of those things that are going on, and also dealing with the far radical right-wing movement, which he's far more reflective of, I guess you would say. And to a lot of extent, no, he's definitely just like Barack Obama. He's very much a moderate. He's not much on either side. Donald Trump, business tycoon. You should have saw his face when they said the economics portion. He's like, oh, okay, I'm about to fuck this dude up. I guess we were expecting one person to body bag the other, or one person to just completely run away with this debate, but then that kind of says that you don't understand the nature of a debate. They would not be debating if both sides did not have equal say. Joe Biden constantly calling Donald Trump a racist, not a racist, calling him a liar, which might be worse than being a racist, quite honestly with you. Because nature of racism is pathological lying to oneself and lying to others, and then justifying your actions through the pathological lie. But calling him a liar constantly, I think it took away from a lot of the truth that Trump did say. He did make the GDP spike in Ohio and Michigan. Things have been doing better. And up until coronavirus and the shutdown that was strongly influenced by the left, strongly influenced by Democrats, while mocking the other side for saying, don't shut down the economy, keep everything running, it's not that big of a deal, people get sick every day. We just had H1N1 not that long ago, people got sick, but we continued on and kept moving. But no, it's like none of that. It's like both men fail to find anything to respect about the other man. They struggle to find anything to relate to the other man. And it's like in a way that would quite honestly end up as a fist fight between the majority of people. The way that these two people, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, just can't give the other person the respect to let them speak. They can't give the other person the respect to say when they're right and to question when they're wrong or to question when something sounds questionable. It's like both men are so reflective of the other that if they would just be like old school like real old school politics, when people were really trying to get shit done, um, I'll just say the full thought. You know, we've come to so much convenience and comfort and decadence in American society. You know, we forget that politics was used to keep men who thought vastly different or had vastly different interests or came from vastly different locations. There's still some unification, there's still some forward front there for us to work together to pool our national resources, to pool our gubernational resources on the state level, you know, in order for people to get the things that they need and for people not to starve. The difficulty with all this is that with how polarized politics has become, with how ignorant people have become about the policies being passed, the legislature being passed, who has the power, the Senate, the House, or the President, you know, who belongs within the Supreme Court and who does not, how many Supreme Courts are there, you know? Because Trump's saying that there's like 128 or 228, I think it was 128, judge seat positions left open from the Obama administration. And that just goes to show the overall incompetence, arrogance, and pride of the Obama administration, since people were basically worshiping Barack Obama, and he didn't really have any strong questioning. He didn't really have any strong affront. You didn't really know what he was doing. You didn't know to investigate into the Obama administration. You trusted Obama so much that Obama got away with murdering the American economy, the American public, the American health insurance plan. And the marketing was so good, the psychology was so good, the media pushed behind him so much. You didn't realize that he wasn't that great of a guy. Like, he didn't really do much to help us. So when they talk about taking away Obamacare, people don't realize, like, Obamacare is indeed very, very expensive. You know, if the alternative is free healthcare to Obamacare, Obamacare is a way in which the corporations and the people that create medicine are not happy, the pharmacies aren't happy, and then the customers receiving healthcare aren't happy. Okay, so my solution to healthcare is that you have privatized and public healthcare, just like you have privatized and public colleges. But what you need to do is stop making it all for profit. You know, because if you're not going to profit off of people with pre-existing conditions the people that would actually need the insurance, it doesn't make any sense to even have this system of insurance to begin with. So you need to restructure the entire way that healthcare workers get paid, how much healthcare costs. You need to probably more than likely abolish insurance companies and just create a brand new system in which that works, in which maybe the same companies can adapt and rebrand and continue doing the same thing. But it's very evident right now that insurance is costing people more than they can afford. These people are both so far removed from the average American struggle that they're more willing to defend probably close to about maybe 1 million or 2 million people that are actually happy with their health care, while the other 298 people or 228 million people struggle because their healthcare is way too expensive. Even if they're only making $5,000, I saw some healthcare rates. It was like $12,000 every single month just for healthcare. And then you have car insurance, and then you have your mortgage, you have your rent, you have to feed yourself, then you have student loan debt. It's like there's so many systems within America that are used to keep people poor, but none of this is being discussed at the presidential level because these people at the presidential level do not relate to the average American president. So it doesn't matter whether it's with Joe Biden or with Donald Trump because neither of them relate. Maybe Joe Biden has a bit more of a perspective because he grew up in Scranton, but as he revealed today, he grew up in the suburbs of Scranton. He wasn't growing up in the city streets. He wasn't growing up in slums. He grew up in the suburbs. and no one knows the suburbs better than Joe Biden. So he once again had one of these sanitized, hyper protected lives in a shell, in which he probably didn't have any black friends, probably didn't know black people had any real say within the government, probably had no real history of what being a real Democrat was. And then he was indeed like he wasn't like the last in his class. He had a C average when he graduated from college, which I think a lot of people would have had. So he's an average Joe, so to speak, Joe Biden. Um, I really don't have much bad things to say about either guy because I just don't want to go that route. I just don't have that kind of perspective on things. I think Joe Biden would be very effective in his own way, but I just don't see either for the next 4 years, regardless of who gets elected, because eventually we have to talk about solutions. I feel like you're going to have the same issue whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump. I feel like Donald Trump will more likely cause some kind of world war with just the way that he would feel arrogantly, confidently if he won 2 elections in a row, whether by a crook or whether not by a crook. I feel like with Joe Biden, there would more likely be some kind of civil inquisition because the Civil War was never resolved, and there's a lot of the same issues and a lot of the same tensions now as there was about 100 to 250 years ago, sadly but surely. The Reconstruction era never happened. It began, but it never completed, never finished. So, where we should have gotten as a nation, having equal respect, having equal dignity, having equal opportunity, and no longer being tied to by skin color alone, because we understand there are many rich, very affluent black people who are not celebrities, who are not athletes, that are just regular people that are great with money, and they're allowed to be wealthy, they're allowed to be rich, and no one but the IRS and the Federal Reserve has any say on that. You know, reality. Maybe Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion might have something to say, but aside from that, nobody can prevent them from being wealthy or employing rich white people or employing poor white people. A lot of more white people are poor. Some white people and a lot of white people are more poor than the poorest black person. And they're very angry and they're very bitter. They're very upset. So it's like both sides get neglected in this case. I don't see anything being said by Donald Trump that's going to help poor whites. I don't see anything being said by Joe Biden that's going to help poor black people or middle class black people or any black person. He acts like he cares, but I don't feel like he really does because he's not connected enough to it, and the president that was in the White House wasn't connected enough to it to really have any real perspective on what it's like to be growing up as a black man in America, positively, negatively, or neutrally. What's it like to be a man within the prison industrial system, positively, negatively, or neutrally? They have no idea. So the things in America that really need to get fixed, the labor situation in America, they're talking about opening up jobs in the economy, but the jobs they're talking about opening up are equivalent to slave labor. They might pay very well if you're trained and you have a certification and you've been through trade school for carpentry, for construction, and things of that nature, where you work with the labor union and you do that for a few decades. But the jobs that they're talking about opening up, they're not going to be. See, first off, my issue with this is that so you're already dictating the jobs in society, the only jobs in society that are really going to be opened up, and more than likely the people that are going to be doing it. So it's like, here are some jobs, but they don't care about the Green New Deal, which I guess is pretty expensive. But it's like neither offers any real alternative, nor has any real perspective. Joe Biden's been working in government for 50 years. The majority of his life, the majority of his adult life, he's been paid more than the average person ever makes within years, in one single year. Likewise with Trump. I don't think either of these men have any real perspective on what the economic or labor situation is for Americans. So if you're middle class, I don't feel like your situation's really going to be shut up too much because you're going to have the same tax bullshit that you've been going through for years and then that you've gotten used to. If you're black in society, I feel like things will get more dangerous under Trump, but I also feel like we were going to get more organized and get a lot more militant under Donald Trump as well if he has a second term, because Americans are very big on not repeating mistakes of the past and very anti-Nazi. So you can see a lot more of that striking up and becoming a lot more of an issue. If you're poor, things are going to be very difficult for you regardless. It's going to be hard no matter who is president because neither of these people have any real interest in helping you. Neither of these people have any real idea of what you're going through, and I can help you, but it's going to take work, and it's going to take restructuring a lot of your perspectives and a lot of their ideas about life. You know, the poor man has to help himself, and that's the only fate that there's ever going to be in America. I don't care if you're white, the poor man has to work with other poor people as well. You have to stop the hatred between people that don't have enough. You have to stop judging people that are counting their pennies and counting their change because you want to get rich off of their misfortune and get rich off of their needs instead of just looking at the way that you two can grow rich together, you know? I don't want either side to ever really feel stuck. For the ultra rich and the ultra wealthy, you won again because you put yourself in a win-win situation, which just kind of seems to be what rich people do apparently, what wealthy people do apparently. You've created a win-win situation that no matter who's elected, the interests of the rich are going to be protected. I don't feel like rich people care, honestly, whether or not their taxes are affected. I feel like that's a very big first world problem. I don't feel like their taxes will be affecting them in such a way in which they're not going to get the money back, or in which they probably were not doing real taxes already. They were probably just trying to find tax loopholes, and there's nothing wrong with people who are very rich, even if you had a flat rate for taxes for everyone across the board, which would be the only thing that most people would subscribe to, or just like a few percentage differences. But people are proposing 50% of their wealth. They're proposing 33% of their wealth, and it's missing the entire issue. It's not right when you do it to the poor. It's not right when you're trying to get back and do it to the rich or to the wealthy. You know, it's not good that poor people pay more in taxes, or there is a such thing as poor tax and people just laugh at it. It's not a good thing that people are constantly trying to rob, trying to murder, and try to brutalize those who are affluent or criticize and break them down. Society needs to work together, and that's the major thing in this debate, which I just kind of saw the ruin of America watching this. I know I said I was going to be positive, but that's really the most positive that I can make it. Some people are calling this the end times. They're calling this the apocalypse. They're worried about nuclear warfare. They're worried about civil war. They're worried about World War III. They're worried about things of that nature. I don't think it's going to be really that dramatic unless people make it that dramatic, quite honestly. Because it's going to be 4 years that you're going to have to survive regardless. And I plan to survive in peace. I plan to survive with joy. I plan to survive with fulfillment, with great success, and to keep growing stronger every single year. No matter who's president, no matter who's in office, I'm still going to be fine. I'm still going to be great. I'm still going to be working on what I'm working on, and I still have a life to live. No matter who's elected, it's not going to steal my peace. It's not going to steal my happiness. And that's what I would really suggest to you. But with that, I just wish I could see a world where Joe Biden and Donald Trump work together to actually solve things for Americans. Because I would say that Joe Biden definitely has a greater understanding of how the political system works, has enough connections globally and nationally to get things done at a faster rate than most people can. And Joe Biden's a good guy, you know, like he just seemed like Uncle Joey, you know, something like kind of like that nature. That I wouldn't really call him a goofball, but he's silly. Granddad, you forgot shit. You stupid bastard. You know, Donald Trump, I guess we would say he's more like the father figure for the country. No one likes that. The discipline, the law, the order, the high standard for presentation. You can see why his kids kind of turned out the way that he did. He doesn't take any less. He doesn't take any bullshit. He's not afraid to say things exactly the way that they are. He's not going to pretend. That's a great thing. So if the two of those forces could work together to actually improve this country, because they both have plans for Black America, but the only thing that's missing is the other half. They both have a plan, and both plans need to be combined together to be effective. And it's just criticism. It's just argument. It's just mudslinging. It's just tearing people down. And it just kind of shows how weak both these men are. It shows how cowardly both of them are. And it shows how ineffective both of them are going to be no matter what. Because it's like, if you're at that grand stage of both of you being able to become president, you're both symbols of white supremacy, and you can't respect each other. You can't let each other speak. You can't say when the other person is right. You can't give the other person credit. I know that the way that the questions are structured, it directly says, and why is your opponent wrong? I think that's more so just for the specter and the theater that has become politics so far, but not for the effectiveness. And, it could all be kayfabe, it could all just be pretend. They could probably go off in the back, give each other hand jobs and blowjobs, and make sweet homosexual love to each other as they do in Bohemian Grove. But who am I to say? I don't know what they do with their free time. But it would just be better. It would be a better spectacle for America to see, and far more helpful to see the two of them acting like adults, to see the two of them acting like leaders, and to act like both of them care about what's best for America. Not just their legacy, not just becoming president before they die, not just not being known as the worst president in history, but actually doing what was best for America. Because right now, I just see two white supremacist rapists, two white supremacist pedophiles, two white supremacist sexual offenders and womanizers waiting for their turn to rape America. And Donald Trump doesn't want to give up the gangbang. And Joe Biden just wants his turn. I don't see either of them with an effective plan that's going to help America. I feel like Joe Biden's plan is slightly better than Trump's plan, but Trump's plan basically just seems to help the upper middle class, the middle class, and the super wealthy. And everyone else is just get a job. Get a job, fuck you. Don't do what I do what my great grandparents did. And then you can have what I have. That's their best advice for us right now. Is you gotta scrub toilets like my grandfather and save your pennies like my grandfather did so that your son can save his pennies and work a better job and go to college so that his son can be a spoiled, entitled asshole like I am. That's in the case of Donald Trump. And I guess in the case of Joe Biden as well, because I read his backstory, maybe not as so much and not as smarmy and not as facetious, but definitely based on the same thing. Their grandfathers did all the work, their fathers took credit for the work, and now they're reaping the benefits of the harvest. Joel Osteen is kind of the same. Some people won't like that, but it's the truth. It's the truth with both of them. It's rough. If both of them could work together to make a stable plan for both of us, I don't see why people wouldn't like Donald Trump, Joe Biden, 2020. That seems like Joe Biden and Donald Trump 2020, or Donald Trump and Joe Biden 2020, and we have a co-leadership, and they're forced to negotiate. They're forced to deal with each other in order to make a difference from two opposite sides. I think our political system should be slightly different. I feel like we should have a Democratic president and we should have a Republican president. We should have 2 seats for president, at least 3 seats for president. And each seat is basically responsible for working with the judicial branch, the legislative branch, and then the executive branch, which is honestly the militaristic branch. People like to say executive, they don't like to say we execute people, and how are we going to execute our plans globally? They learn it in some kind of bullshitty type of way, but they get shit done unit. And then the 3 presidents relate with the 3 branches of government and convey. And since they each have a different perspective and they're each responsible for a different section, they're forced to listen to one another. You might have an issue where the three sides collude, and I think that's a good thing because if it's in the name of people that honestly do want the best for American government, they honestly do want the best for the American people, you can't go wrong because the person that doesn't is going to be exposed somewhere down the line. You know, where you can have it like Among Us and just have two imposters and have the rest be crewmates. I don't know though. But I think that's a great plan. I think there should be three units to the presidential branch and the leadership base in the society. And then we can have a minority leader, we can have a majority leader, and then we can have a woman leader. Just one has to be a woman. And that's a rule. You know, I'm not being facetious, I'm not joking. One of them has to be a woman to ensure that the interest of women is protected, whether it's within the military, which would be great, or whether within legislature, or whether within the Supreme Court, one has to be a woman by default. This would also give people more rotation within American government as well, especially at the federal level, to have a bit more organization. So all this isn't falling upon one person to do, it falls upon three people, and this is the best part for the American people. We're not creating three salaries for the president, we're creating literally the same salary divided by three. Because the workload's being divided by three. That way, they're forced to be responsible. I don't see any real issues with the Senate or the House of Representatives. The only thing I might say is that you either have to first fire everybody that's there and then extend terms. But I think the only way that we're going to have any reasonable change is if we have for a trial period for about a few decades or so. Maybe that's too long. I would say maybe even a presidency. You know, shorten the terms for Senate so that more people are flowing through there in case the senator is ineffective. I would say extending the terms because I know what Senate and I know what House is like, and sadly a lot of their time is really focused upon being elected again to see if they can be more effective, that if it was any shorter than 6 years, they would just be campaigning literally they would be forced to campaign literally all the time. There would be no incentive to get things done at all because they would be in the office for such a short time period, kind of like the House of Representatives, that it really makes no difference otherwise whether they were in the House or not in the House because they got their money and they moved forward and they left. That's my perspective on things. This video is long enough. And, you know, I just wish that these two guys would work together. I just wish that both sides could get on the same page because we can only fix American issues with bipartisanship. We're only going to be able to fix this country for everybody if everybody has a seat at the table and everyone's allowed to speak up for themselves, to say what they know they are going through. We don't need white supremacists talking about the issues of the black community. We need people that are actually struggling in the black community, not the fucking coons, and I'm just going to call it out, that want the white supremacists, give me 1 second, that want the white supremacist privilege and want the white supremacist benefits, but they don't want to be down for the actual struggles of what black people are going through. Likewise with the women who don't really have favor or interest in what women are going through. They're only in it for their own self-interest. We need to be able to work together. We need to be able to cooperate. We need to be able to listen to each other because we wouldn't have these vastly different political beliefs and religious beliefs if there wasn't something unifying it all together to help us find truth. We each have a piece of truth. We each have a piece of the puzzle. And not one of us is right. All of us has to be right. One person can be right if he looks at all sides and he understands all sides, and then he can understand and decipher truth. But it's very difficult to do that if the other side's just an idiot. The other side's just a bleeding heart. The other side is just a minority. They're just a child, and no one's going to understand what they're going through, or they're too old and too disconnected to understand what other people are going through. We need to get on the same page as a nation because a house divided cannot stand, and we are ripe to be conquered. Either to be conquered internally by a black supremacist group, more than likely Latinos, more than likely Latinos and more than likely Asians working together in collusion. But in the future, you're not going to see a white supremacist president. You're going to see presidents of a lot of different shapes and sizes, because after these next 4 years, and neither Joe Biden and neither Donald Trump can solve the problem because they're both only in the interest of white supremacy. You're going to have a big issue if you didn't wake up already. You're going to have a big issue if you didn't understand that the poor have to help the poor. The middle class have to help the middle class, because the rich are rich because they help the rich. Power protects power, and don't ever forget that.